Hey folks, Green Stuff Gav here. This week we're going to do some more painting, but something a little bit different. Now, I was recently at a Bring+Buy at FactoruM, and a chap was selling a whole load of soda pop miniatures stuff. Now, I really regret selling my copy of Super Dungeon Explorer. But for those who don't know, Super Dungeon Explorer is like a board game / RPG / dungeon crawler by Soda Pop Miniatures. It's all done on a very chibi art style, but way before it became popularized. So I picked up a few of the minis and I thought I'd paint them up just because they're really fun to paint, really characterful little miniatures. I thought I'd start with the Succubus Vandella. Now, for Super Dungeon Explorer, characters can either be player characters, so you could play as the Succubus, or they can be mini bosses. So effectively, they can be the bad guys that you fight after cleaving through all of the minions. Now, obviously, the colour scheme here is all the pinks and the purples of traditional Succubus. But looking at the details, you've got the little wings on her head and the actual wings, screams to me Morgan from Darkstalkers. So I thought I'd go for a more natural natural skin tone and paint her up to match Morgan. And yeah, we'll do it here on camera, as it were. So let's do some painting. I'm probably going to fast forward and more recommended trying to do a voiceover work. So I'm going to be giving that a go. So I'm going to go into fast forward mode and I'll try and hold all the paints up so you guys can see exactly the colours I'm using. Now I'm starting with a black undercoat as per normal, and here we can start. I always try to paint the faces first for miniatures because it's a focal point. So I'm starting with a darker skin tone, which Morgan wears these tights, so the theory being I can continue it down to be all the tights. And as per mentioned, I already water all my paints down, but still use a palette to add a touch of water, especially with the heat going on here in the UK. And you see I'm just picking all the bits out, including all the bits that are going to be tights in the end, because they'll get a second coat. Where I'm putting thin layers on means that by layering the same colour over top itself gives you more pigment, so it effectively gives you your own shading and highlighting if you do it with quite a thin coat. Now the tail, Morgan doesn't have a tail, but I thought I'd follow the colour for the basque she's wearing. But while I wait for the skin to dry, a lot of painting is about finding your layers. So I'm putting a dark purple down on all the bits that are going to be like that pink. So if you look at the sprite work from Morgan, she's got pink bat wings. So by starting with purple means that it goes over black, which is good, as well as you can work it up and that'll be the shaded colour. And a big part of the way I paint is I paint in colour, so while the skin is drying I can go on and paint the wings, I can paint the hair, then as the hair's drying I can go back and do another layer on the skin. So it's all about finding your layers. Obviously some people will just do one colour, layer it up, completely finish that colour before doing the next, but I do a good tabletop standard. I'm not going to win any awards, but I certainly have fun with it all. The hair I was really debating on. So here we go. Now I'm going back to the next layer of skin while the hair dries. You see the paint here is all sort of dried up, so I'm adding some painter's built to try and revive it. This is where you have a ball bearing and one of those little vibrating nubs for mixing, but I just make do. Yeah, so I'm going back over again. This is a very thin coat. You can see it looks very patchy here. We'll give it another coat later on, but the key here is just to pick out all the skin pieces and just to differentiate between where the skin is going to be and where her clothes are, because as mentioned she wears these stockings, so I extended that to like the arms. So picking at things like the eyelashes, the eyelids, fingers. Now, where we mentioned there is I'm going over these bits that I've done, the bits that are going to be effectively in the tights, with the same colour, testicle fur, just to where it's gone on as a thin coat. That gives us a real sort of gives us the real opportunity of adding shading by just using the same colour. And again, going up with purples. I know the wings are going to be pink by the time we're done, but by layering up the purples rather than go straight in, because you could go for like a red and work it up from red up to pink, but by going purple gives us a throwback to the original and the original box art, as well as makes it stand out a bit, makes it look a little bit more different, a nice sort of colour change. Now I decided I want to do some white, just throw some white in there to Morgan has these really weird sleeve pieces, but just to break up the colour a bit and add a bit of visual interest. I did originally try wet brushing to give us like to retain some of the details, very similar to a dry brush, but it just didn't work, so in the end I've blocked them out, and I'll go back and add an ink later just to add some definition. But the good thing with Corax White, because it's a grey, it actually goes straight over black. I go back and give it another coat in a bit, but just straight off the bat you can see the difference that makes, how it just adds such a bit more brightness to the figure. I knock the camera over here because back to wings. I need to get on with the hair, but I was at this point I'm still debating how I'm going to paint the hair. So I just go in and finish off some more of the colours while I try and work out what I'm actually going to do. We can see I'm not quite going all the way to the edges, leaving that touch of purple, because just for a bit of shading. Now if a professional could go in and give it some more highlighting on the pink itself, some sort of edge work, but I really don't think it's worth it. So here I've decided to go, you can see I'm effectively painting in lines. I'm not covering the whole area, so that's leaving a hint of the warbus green. So I'm effectively painting the hair detail on. Now some sculpts you can just get away with like a wet brush or a dry brush, but a lot of the chibi miniatures tend to have very flat hair detail. So it's all about just painting on in lines, and that gives the effect of having hair detail sculpted. So you can see here I'm just leaving gaps between the wall screen, so a little bit heavier on some areas because that's where the hair would flow. Touch silver to her. Technically it's a whip off the box art, I think, but from the miniature itself it actually looks more like a nunchuck. Go on, add some more white, really pick the eyes out. I did do a video on painting chibi eyes, which you can find on the channel, but I'll try to see if I can put a link thing in here. Yeah, I'm still layering up the hair, and you can really see I'm using a finer brush now just to really put streak lines in. and this will give us the effect of hair. Obviously the hard part is to work out how hair would actually fall to give it that realistic look, or semi-realistic look. You could theoretically do them all block colour and then paint a highlight on the same way that animators do, but I don't think that would look quite as cool as giving the effect of stranded hair, so hair strands. So now this is following through the Chibi Eye tutorial. Is paint an iris, and then while that's drying I'm just touching up some of the black detail where we've had some overspill, things like the basque, the boots. Now I'm going for green eyes. I can't remember what Morgan's original coloured eyes were, but just painting the iris in green, and while that dries just go and clean up some more of the some other bits and pieces. Now here I go for a contrast to bring all the detail out that we lost where the dry brush failed. Now you might see here, so while I put a whole load on, I go back and I sort of dry the brush off and use the existing pools of contrast to move it about, because contrast can pool in all the places. You want to keep it nice and consistent across. Black iris, tiny brush, bit of reflection on the eyes, and then the basin is basically wet brushing. So similar to the way you would a tri brush, i.e. get paint on the brush, take the paint off, and then put it back and forth. By having more paint on it is a wet brushing, and gives it a bit more of a colour boost. And then progressively using the same brush gives you more of a dry brush. Paint the rims black. Just again, just slight tidy up. Just really sort of finish it off. Now I decided there was a skull you saw me do in silver earlier, but there was also one on her little dog collar. So I picked them out in gold just to give a bit, another bit of contrast. So I'm really struggling with the camera today. Yeah, she turns out right. It's bearing in mind these are absolutely tiny models, so I think she turned out nice. As always, thanks for watching and have fun.